Hello and welcome to the Malika Writes channel. My name is Malika Writes and today we are going to be doing part 3 of the Danger of the Fae Realm series. I really apologise for my voice. I have a cold. The season has changed and so my immune system is a bit too weak to take the change in weather, but we shall soldier on. So in today's video, I want to round up our series and sort of end it by talking about examples of what it's like to be lost in the Fae Realm, because I think that will be useful in sort of rounding up this idea. So the first example that I have, which I think everyone on this who watches this channel will be slightly familiar with, is the example of Beren in the Beren and Luthien story by J.R.R. Tolkien. So for those of you who do not know the story of Beren and Luthien, here is a quick recap. Beren is the son of Barahir and he falls in love with Luthien, the daughter of King Fingal and Melian the Maya. And so he goes as a bride price for Luthien. He has to get a Silmaril from the crown of the big enemy of the age, which is Morgoth. And that's sort of the price that he has to pay in order to marry Luthien. Beren is eventually killed but then resurrected, and he basically has to live the rest of his life away from mortals. So that's the basic gist of the story. Of course, anyone who has read the Silmarillion or even read Beren and Luthien, the book by itself, knows that a lot more happens than what I've just described. But that's just the basic summary. So when we look at Beren's life, he is the son of a tribe leader and he's very much in the mortal realm. He's outnumbered. He's literally watched his family be killed off. So he's very much in the mortal realm with the tangible world and all of its struggles. But then the moment he passes through the girdle of Melian, he's now in this enchanted world. And in the poem that Tolkien wrote to tell the Beren and Luthien story, it basically says that the moment he sort of enters this place, it heals his weary feet that over hills were doomed to roam. So we have a character that the moment he enters this fairy realm through the portal, which is Melian's girdle, which was put up to protect the kingdom of Doriath, but the moment he enters this place, we have a distinct shift because he's entered a place where magic is possible. He's entered the Fae Realm within the context of the story. Quite literally, he's entered the kingdom of an elf who is part of the Fae Realm. We consider elves to be part of fantasy. So he's entered the Fae Realm and he encounters Luthien, who is the most beautiful of all the children of Eluvata, because she is half Maya, because Melian is a literal angel within the context of Tolkien's work. So over the course of the poem that describes Beren's chase of Luthien as she sort of runs away from this haggard wild man who's been living abroad in the wild to escape the wrath of Morgoth, we see that he's wasting a lot of time. If you really have to think about the length of time that Beren spends chasing Luthien. So we have a passage in the poem that says, "When winter passed, she came again, and her song released the sudden spring." So we can assume that the time before Beren actually sees Luthien, this is around a sort of springtime, month. And then we have a transition to winter. So we've transitioned from spring to autumn to winter and back to spring. So he's been chasing her for a very, very long time. That's a long time to spend in the Fae Realm, and we can only imagine what's going on outside of the Fae Realm and all the conflicts that are taking place. So he's really... So we can see almost at this point the consequence of that. If Beren had responsibilities in the outside world, well, he's just spent a year chasing a fairy woman. And those responsibilities would naturally suffer because of the time that he spent in the Fae Realm. And even though for the context of the story, Beren was on the run, so his responsibilities in the real world were basically just being on the run. But as we go further on, even Beren, given his context of just being on the run, is not exempt from the consequences of being a mortal in a world that isn't tangible. So we come to the point of the story where Beren and Luthien have met each other and they've fallen in love with each other. So they go to Doriath after a while spending time with each other, and Beren makes his intentions to marry Luthien known. And her father, who is a very proud elven king, is not happy about this proposal. So he gives Beren an impossible task to complete. He says, get a Silmaril from the crown of Morgoth, and then you may marry my daughter. So Beren, not really knowing the entire context, because he's only a few years old compared to the elves who have lived for thousands of years, so they really know the context behind the Silmarils. But Beren doesn't know that, so he unwisely says, sort of makes a jest about kings giving away their precious daughters for jewels, but he doesn't really understand the context of this particular jewel. So he goes off, and along the way he gets into various troubles. He gets thrown in prison. Luthien has to come and rescue him, which is a feat that I would argue is only really possible because she is of the Fae Realm. So things that aren't possible or within the realm of possibility for normal people, she's able to do them. For example, the singing challenge, or later on where she manages to dance Morgoth to sleep. That's not something a human woman could do. So a lot of the challenges, and again this comes back to the point we were making in the previous videos, that the Fae Realm, no matter how difficult the challenge you encounter in that realm is, it will never be as difficult as real life. In real life, you can't dance someone to sleep. You can't dance your enemy to sleep. And so there's no magical hound to rescue you from a horrible situation. And so within the Fae Realm, there's always a magical solution to your problems that you don't have access to in the real world. And that's the problem. When you conflate the two worlds, or when you imagine that just because you can conquer things in the story you've written, or in the game you're playing, or when you've filled yourself up with alcohol, in a very base sort of way of connecting to the Fae Realm, but when you've used a form of escapism to make yourself feel worthy, and then you come to the real world, the solutions that you used in the Fae Realm do not apply to the real world. There is no one coming to rescue you. There is no song that you can sing to the Morgoths in your life that would send them to sleep so you can take the jewel that they've stolen. Things like that don't happen. And even moving further on in the Beren and Luthien story, what we have is that Beren dies as a result of this, but is resurrected due to the fact that Luthien again sings to Mandos, who is the keeper of the houses of the dead, and he calls back Beren's soul, and Beren and Luthien are able to live together again. But Beren can no longer go amongst mortals. It's not explicitly said in the text that he was forbidden, but they just never went back amongst mortals, which is inherently a consequence of giving yourself over to the Fae Realm. You distance yourself from people. If we have to take this out of the context of a romantic love story in Tolkien's world, and actually put it into reality, into the tangible world, we basically have a situation in which somebody isolates themselves. And this is a tale that is all too true in the real world, because we have people who, when they become over-invested in the Fae Realm, in the imagination, when they detach themselves from reality, they start to detach themselves from people. We don't see them for weeks on end because they're in their room. And it's not to say that these activities or forms of escapism are inherently bad. It's a great thing to be able to see beyond the reality, because it can give you a boost of hope. It can give you that sense of inspiration. But when you begin to lose yourself in that, it becomes very dangerous, because then you actually lose touch with the real world. We constantly call celebrities out of touch. They don't understand what it's like. But they're a typical example of what it means to be lost in a world where your reality is not based. And that's a very dangerous thing, because then you sound out of touch. And that's probably one of the lighter consequences of getting lost in this Fae imaginary world. So what is the solution? What do we do? How do we go from here? Am I saying that reading books, reading fantasy books, science fiction books, are all of these things bad? Should we not do them? Of course not. I think it's a marvelous thing to escape for a few hours, to actually give yourself a bit of a break from reality, because constantly dealing with the harshness of life is going to make people sour. So I honestly believe that escapism has its place. It's a necessary part of us being humans. Our imagination is not something that should be repressed. However, acknowledging the danger of it is important. And so it's very advisable to be moderate. When you do something out of moderation, you actually begin to put yourself in the danger zone. So it's about being moderate. It's about enjoying these stories, enjoying these activities, but also remembering that there is a real life in front of you. These stories should give you courage to face the truth. They shouldn't be a way for you to escape the truth, or worst, to deceive yourself. It should be a way to encourage you to keep moving forward in your actual life, to look at the problems that plague your real life, your tangible life, and focus on conquering them. It may be difficult to conquer what is in real life. It may be really hard to actually face up to what is in the tangible world, because it's not a dragon that you can slay. It may not be something that you can attack with your hands. It may require another skill set. It may require you to actually be challenged. It may go into territories that are actually uncomfortable for you to be in. But that is the challenge. If we admire people like Aragorn, who were able to do things that were out of their skill set, then that should give you the courage to go out of your skill set, to face the challenges in your life, and not complain about them constantly, but actually be willing to do something, even if it's not in a way that you feel like you should be doing it. And so that's where escapism comes in. It's a moment of relief. It can be a source of inspiration. But it is not where you should build your house. And so with that we conclude this series. I'm so annoyed that I'm concluding this with a voice that is completely horrible, but I hope it hasn't been too bothersome to listen to. I really apologize for this, but I really wanted to upload a video and not go again for such a long period of time without uploading anything. So I hope that you have enjoyed this video despite my voice. I hope you have enjoyed the series, because I think it was something I really wanted to talk about for a very long time, because I think it's something that needs to be said. And I'm not hampering on video games. I don't want it to seem like I'm just saying what every other sort of mum has a complaint about. I'm talking about anything that causes you to escape, and that could even be books, because it's people like, even like me myself. So it's not me talking at people and saying, oh, you're getting lost in this escapism world. No, it's to everyone. Whatever you use to access this imagination and to escape from your reality. That's great for a few hours. But after that, you do need to come back to the real world and face it and conquer it and use all the courage that was inspired in you when you read about your heroes to conquer this world in the way that this world operates. Because you can't take the sword that you slashed at the dragon in the Fae world to operate in the real world, because there are no dragons here. There are no Fae women here. There are no fairies and elves in this world. And so it's about confronting your reality with the courage that has been inspired in you by the Fae Realm. And so with that, we end the video. Thank you so much for watching, and this has been the Malika Writes channel.